The Jeddah race was an absolute spectacle for fans all around the world. It was packed with so much excitement and drama that it was hard to keep up. One of the major highlights was the fact that Fernando Alonso finally achieved his 100th podium, which was a truly remarkable moment that had everyone cheering. It's about time that he's getting the recognition he deserves after all his hard work this season. And let's not forget about Aston Martin's incredible performance. They're really dominating this season. It's clear that both Alonso and Aston Martin are on top of their game. But the FIA almost snatched away Alonso's win with their outdated penalty system. Luckily, they saw the light and made things right by giving it back to him. Let's see how everything unfolded. Fernando Alonso, the racer who struggled to secure a top 3 finish in 6 whole seasons, has gone and smashed the monumental 100 podium milestone in style. He's absolutely on fire, bagging not 1, but 2 podium finishes in just 2 races. And get this, he's now part of the elite group of only 6 drivers who've achieved this insane feat. He's now setting his sights on surpassing Raikkonen and Amprost's tally this season to become the 4th driver with the most podiums in the history of the sport. Talk about mind-blowing stuff. But hold your horses. It turns out that this epic achievement almost didn't happen during the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix. Can you believe it? The memory of his 100th podium has now been tarnished by the utter chaos that surrounded it. So let's take a closer look at the rules that govern these events, shall we? Thanks to the incredible cameras and cutting-edge technology on the grid, the FIA was able to issue a swift and decisive 5-second penalty to Esteban Ocon for his pit box mishap during the race. But here's the real kicker. He was already given the same penalty during the first race 2 weeks earlier. Penalising drivers for being millimetres off-centre in their pit box is a bit harsh, and the punishment, which is a 5-second penalty, seems excessively harsh. Even George Russell agrees. I understand why these rules are there. We've got to stick within the guidelines. A little bit of common sense needs to be shown, Russell said. Ultimately, I think he was a bit to the left. Was that right? He gained nothing from this. Perhaps a 5-second penalty is too much. But then, in regards to his pit stop again, I don't know what happened and why he received a further penalty exactly. But a 10-second penalty is too extreme in that case again. So in the world of Formula 1, there are some pretty strict sporting regulations that drivers need to follow. One of these rules is that if a driver is hit with a 5-second time penalty, they have to serve it at their next pit stop. Simple, right? Well, not quite. You see, the clock doesn't start ticking until the car has come to a complete stop, and the mechanics have to wait a full 5 seconds before they can start working on the vehicle. And if the driver doesn't make another pit stop after being penalised, those precious 5 seconds get added to their final race time. Now, let's talk about Fernando Alonso. During a safety car period triggered by his teammate Lance Stroll's retirement, Alonso was hit with a 5-second time penalty. His Aston Martin mechanics made sure to observe the full 5 seconds before jumping in to change his tyres. But here's where things get tricky. There are some concerns raised post-race about whether or not mechanics began working on the car before the time penalty had actually started. And while some people have argued that drivers shouldn't be penalised during safety car periods, that only applies to drive-through and stop-go penalties, not pit stop penalties like this one. But don't worry, the FIA, that's the governing body for Formula 1, keeps a close eye on everything. They monitor all penalties served in the pit lane in real time and review them with race control as well as their remote operations centre in Geneva. So while there may be some controversy, you can bet that everything is being looked at very closely. Now, let's talk about one of the latest measures implemented by racing's governing body, the Remote Operations Centre, ROC. This cutting-edge system was put in place to prevent a repeat of the debacle that occurred during the 2021 World Championship, when race director Michael Massey made a mistake that influenced the outcome. So what exactly is the ROC? It's like the video assistant referee system, VAR, in football, or how the NFL assesses officiating decisions in real time from New York. Any hint of a transgression, and the incident and evidence are immediately referred to the independent stewards for consideration. It's like having a team of hawk-eyed judges keeping watch over every turn and straightaway. The ROC takes some of the pressure off those in race control on race day, allowing them to focus on more pressing issues. And while it seemed like Fernando Alonso's pit stop was all good during the initial review, things started to get wild in the final laps. Radio chatter from a rival team, Mercedes, informed George Russell that Alonso might have an additional time penalty to serve at the end of the race. Holy smokes! The reason for this penalty wasn't immediately clear, but rumours began to swirl that Alonso's pit stop might not have been as clean as it appeared on the surface. Despite no official suggestion from the FIA of a penalty, George Russell's race engineer urged him to push just in case. But here's a kicker. The penalty had already been served on lap 18. Why did it take the rest of the race for them to determine whether it had been served correctly or not? It's like waiting until a football match is over to make a penalty call, which actually happened in a game with Manchester United. They were awarded a penalty after the final whistle, which contributes to the fact that not always these video assistant referees are for the best of the sport. Things got even more intense when Alonso landed on the podium, and the FIA's official messaging system announced an incident and launched an investigation into his pit stop. Talk about a plot twist. It was then revealed that Alonso had been given a 10-second time penalty, costing him his third position to Russell. The official document explaining the reason for the penalty wasn't released until after midnight, over 3 hours later. Fans were left feeling confused and frustrated with the system, and Alonso himself criticised the delay. Can you blame him? Waiting until after the podium to apply and announce a penalty is just plain wrong. Fernando Alonso hit the nail on the head when he pointed out the fundamental flaw in the racing system. Changing the result after the game has ended without explanation is just asking for chaos and uproar. The Saudi Arabia race was rife with drama, as a new report was shared with the stewards during the final lap. The report stated that Fernando Alonso's penalty had not been properly observed and requested a full investigation. This decision by the stewards was eventually announced after midnight, causing fans to question the integrity of the system. The stewards' decision was based on the understanding that touching the car during the time penalty period constituted working on it. This understanding was reached by the FIA Sporting Advisory Committee, SAC, after the opening race of the year. However, Aston Martin had a different interpretation of the rules and did not believe that a jack touching the car constituted work taking place. Despite video footage showing that the rear jack had been touching the rear of Alonso's car during the penalty period, Aston Martin appealed the decision. To further complicate matters, 40 minutes later, Aston Martin's sporting director Andy Stevenson went to the stewards for a hearing. This added even more confusion and controversy to an already tumultuous situation. Aston Martin was not going to go down without a fight. The team launched an appeal after the stewards had imposed a 10-second time penalty on Alonso for the alleged infringement of working on the car during his time penalty. The team presented 7 examples where the same rule was not enforced on other cars, and it seemed to have worked in their favour. The FIA agreed to review the evidence, and after a thorough investigation, the appeal was successful, and Alonso's position was restored. The decision was a massive relief for Alonso and his team, but it also exposed a glaring loophole in the rulebook. It appears that the current penalties for rule infractions are disproportionate to the offences committed, and it might be time for the FIA to take a more holistic approach to reviewing and revising the entire rulebook. The governing body has already called for a meeting of the SAC to clarify Article 54.4 of the sporting regulations to prevent teams from touching the car during a penalty. However, there is still much work to be done to ensure that the rules are fair and consistently enforced for all teams. What are your thoughts on this? Do you think that the FIA are in the right about this whole thing? Or do you think that the governing body has messed up yet again? Let us know in the comments below, and don't forget to like and subscribe. If you want to watch the havoc that is currently unraveling in McLaren, make sure to watch our next video.